All right, so after a year of, let's call it, adjustment, the European real estate market is starting to show some serious signs of a turnaround. Today, we're going to dive into all the data, all the expert analysis, and give you a really clear picture of what's looking like a cautiously optimistic 2025. Let's get right into it.
So this is it. This is the big question on every single investor's mind right now. After all that uncertainty, are we finally seeing the light at the end of the tunnel? Well, all the signs seem to be pointing to a pretty solid yes.
And hey, you don't have to just take my word for it. This quote from Phil Tillaby over at Altus Group, it just perfectly captures the mood. The keywords here are measured yet sustained. This isn't some sudden, crazy boom. It's a steady, consistent improvement. And really, that's the foundation of the recovery we're about to unpack. Okay, so let's start by zooming out a bit. Let's look at the big picture. What are the key indicators telling us about the health of the overall market? Well, the key indicator here is consistency. 5. We've not seen 5 straight quarters of growth. That's over a year of positive momentum, which tells you this isn't just a fluke, right? It's a genuine trend. And we can actually put a number on that trend. We're talking a nearly 3% year-over-year increase in property values. That is a solid, tangible sign that this recovery is really taking hold all across the continent. So what's fueling this engine? Well, it's kind of the classic recipe for a comeback. You've got inflation coming down, central banks are starting to cut interest rates, and because of all that, investors are just feeling way more confident about putting their money to work again. And check this out. This chart really lays out the economic foundation for us. We're seeing projected GDP growth almost doubling in the euro area for 2025. And then you look at places like the UK and especially Spain, wow, they're forecasting even stronger rebounds. It's simple, really. A growing economy means more jobs, more spending, and a much healthier real estate market. Okay, so now let's drill down and see how this whole recovery is playing out on the ground. Because the big picture is positive, for sure, but the recovery isn't lifting all boats equally. There is a new pecking order emerging among the different real estate sectors. Just look at this. For years and years, the office sector was the undisputed king of the castle. Well, not anymore. This chart shows a truly historic shift in what investors want. The living sector, we're talking all kinds of residential properties, is now the most sought-after asset class, capturing almost a third of all investor interest.
And let me be perfectly clear. This is a first. Never before in the history of CBRE's survey has living been number one. It shows this fundamental pivot, driven by these huge demographic shifts and a search for stable assets that can hedge against inflation. Investors are focusing on one of the most basic human needs there is, a place to live.
And here is the staggering reason why. There is a massive, massive housing shortage across Europe. We're talking nearly 10 million homes needed. And that's not just houses. It's everything from student housing to senior living. This incredible demand, paired with the fact that construction permits are falling, well, that's creating a powerful tailwind for the entire living sector. Now, beyond housing, there is another revolution happening, and this one is being fueled by tech. We are talking about the very backbone of our digital world, these giant logistics warehouses and massive data centers. So, for logistics, it's still about e-commerce and making supply chains stronger. But just look at data centers. The demand coming from AI is being described as unprecedented. Seriously. It's so intense that demand is blowing past new supply and prices are climbing by over 10% in key markets like London and Frankfurt. So what about the old titans, office and retail? Well, they're not dead, they're just transforming. For offices, the whole story is a flight to quality. Companies are downsizing their overall footprint, yeah, but they're willing to pay top dollar for those modern, sustainable prime buildings. And for retail, consumer confidence is back. An incredible 72% of retailers are actually planning to expand, zeroing in on retail parks and the absolute best high street locations. Okay, so we know the sectors are shifting, but there's an even deeper change happening underneath it all. A whole new set of rules is fundamentally reshaping how every single property is valued. And that new rule can be summed up in one word: sustainability. This number says it all, 95%. It's no longer just a nice-to-have or some niche little concern. For basically every single investor in Europe, sustainability is now a core, non-negotiable part of their decision-making process. So what does this actually look like in practice? Well, first, owners have to navigate this complicated web of new regulations, like the EU's new reporting directives. Second, the name of the game is retrofitting. Upgrading existing buildings to meet these new standards is how you add value. And third, and this is the big one, if you don't comply, you face what's being called the brown discount. Your asset will literally lose value just for not being green enough.
So let's bring all these different threads together. What is the final takeaway? What's the outlook for the European real estate market as we head into 2025? Here's your cheat sheet. The recovery is real, but it's gradual. It's taking hold. The living sector, along with logistics and data centers, they're the new leaders of the pack. Office and retail aren't gone, but demand is absolutely polarizing towards the highest quality assets. And underpinning everything, sustainability is now a primary driver of value. And hey, keep an eye on the UK, Spain, and Poland as markets with some particularly strong potential.
In the end, the picture for 2025 is really one of a market that has weathered a pretty significant storm. It's rebalancing, it's transforming, and it's finding a clearer path forward, a path towards renewed growth and all new kinds of opportunities.
And all of this leaves us with a really fascinating question for the future. As these powerful forces of technology and sustainability continue to rewrite the rules, reshaping the very buildings we live and work in, what will the European city of tomorrow actually look like? It's a landscape in motion, and 2025 is just the next chapter in that evolution.